Alright, so today I'm going to tell you the story how English came to be. Now this is going to be a multi-part series. It's going to take a couple of days, a couple of editing hours to be able to get this done correctly. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a long story. I'm going to take you on a road, a journey through time and space. And hopefully by the end of it, you know how English came to be. That's the objective. Now, we're going to start out with the Celtic people. From time to time, I'm going to be reading off of the screen and not giving my personal opinion like I'm doing right now. Now, you might be asking yourself, where's this man's shirt that he normally has on? I don't have it on because it's super hot. That's right, it's super hot, and I'm tired of wearing that shirt. Okay, I'm tired of it, and yeah, I'm here in my natural habitat, my natural look, we could say. Alright, so with that being said, let's get into the story. The Celts, they come from the Hallstatt culture, which flourished from around 800 to 500 BC, and they are considered the dawn of Celtic civilization. Now, the village of Hallstatt is in Austria, and in Austria they found a bunch of artifacts, and these artifacts, they can really show the culture's distinctive characteristics about their burial rites, intricate metalwork, salt mining activities. We're going to talk about some other things they did along the way. Now, along their journeys, they came into contact with the Etruscans. I believe that's how you pronounce it, Etruscans. Now, some of these Celtic groups adopted their writing system. They were the first to do so were the Celts closest to Italy, in a region called Cisalpine Gaul, I believe. This group is known as the Lipontai, and their language is called Lipontic. Inscriptions found written in this language date from around the middle of the 6th century BCE, and they are written in a version of the Etruscan alphabet. Now, even though the Lipontai adopted a Mediterranean alphabet quite early on, other Celts did not follow suit until centuries later. Inscriptions in Gaulish, the language of the Celts living in Gaul, did not appear until the 3rd century BCE. Now, these inscriptions were mostly written in the Greek alphabet rather than the Etruscan alphabet. Many of these inscriptions are just personal names, but Gaulish inscriptions date from the 1st century BCE to the 2nd century CE. And during this period, we find plenty of extensive inscriptions, some of them more than 150 words, such as in the case as the Larzac tablet found at the L'Hospitalet de Larzac in southern France. Its content, deemed a magical curse, likely cast by a group of women against their rivals, reflects the syncretic culture of Roman Gaul. The text lists names of women targeted by the curse, invoking the goddess Adgagsana. Yeah, I think it's how you say it. Adgagsana. According to me, it's Adgagsana. The Celts were literate from at least as early as the 6th century BCE. In later centuries, the Celts of Gaul adapted the Greek alphabet, using it regularly on monuments and coins. The Celts of Britain seem to have used writing a little less, but they did make inscriptions on their coins and occasionally on tablets. Over in Ireland, the Celts were literate at least as early as the 4th century and probably centuries before that. Nonetheless, there is no evidence that the Celts produced any substantial works of literature until long after the ancient period. Now, something to note is you don't see their buildings or anything else because they were made of wood. I believe the same would be said for their writings. Perhaps they didn't survive 2,500 years in a wet, damp environment such as Europe. And that's why I think that we don't see their writings today. So, continuing the story. Succeeding the Hallstatt culture, the Latine culture emerged from around 450 BC and lasted until the Romans' conquest, roughly around 50 BC. That's when they started. Now, the Celts migrating took them as far west as Ireland and the Iberia Peninsula, and as far south as northern Italy and parts of Turkey. That's Galatia in this time. And as far east as Romania and the Ukraine. The Celtic languages are a branch of the larger Indo-European language family, which we'll discuss in the future. Quite a fascinating language. Now, this linguistic heritage, subtle yet significant, is primarily visible in the place names and everyday vocabulary that dot the landscape of Britain and Ireland today. Words such as York, from the Celtic Eboricon, and Thamis from Thamisas, and Bannock, a type of flatbread, or Ben, bog, and crag, a type of hill or cliff, serve as a testament to this enduring legacy. While the contributions of the Celtic to English vocabulary are modest compared to those from Latin, Norse, or Norman French, they are nevertheless meaningful. Speculation exists around Celtic influences on English syntax, as well as the use of the continuous aspect, like I am going, and pronunciation patterns, particularly the R in some regional dialects. Although no examples of extensive Brythonic writings have been found in pre-Roman times, there is an example from during the Roman era. At the city of Bath, archaeologists uncovered a large collection of curse tablets. The vast majority of these are written in a form of Latin, but 2 of them are written in a different language. There is no universal agreement about what language it is, but generally it is believed to most likely be Brythonic, the Celtic language of Britain. Brythonic gradually evolved into Welsh after the end of the Roman era. However, after these Bath curse tablets of the Roman era, there is no evidence of Brythonic or Welsh being written down until centuries later. A monument known as the Cadfan Stone contains possibly the earliest examples of written Welsh. It was produced at some time between the 7th and 9th century. During the earliest days of the Roman Empire, the ancient native languages of Etruscan, Punic, and Gallic still existed. These were gradually taken over by Latin as the empire grew. Celtic was spoken by many citizens of Gaul, including France, Belgium, Switzerland, and northwest Italy. Julius Caesar had several interesting comments to make about the Celts. In De Bello Gallico 1.29, he states the following: in the camp of Helvetii, a Celtic tribe in Gaul, lists were found, drawn up in Greek characters, and were brought to Caesar, in which an estimate had been drawn up, name by name, of the number who had gone forth from their country, who were able to bear arms, and likewise the number of boys, old men, and women separately. Speaking about the Druids, the religious leaders of the Celts, he says, nor do they regard it lawful to commit these sacred matters to writing, though in almost all other matters in their public and private transactions they use Greek characters. This shows that the Celts produced written works in a variety of contexts. They wrote things down for personal use and also for public transactions. Writing was not an obscure aspect of Celtic life, and from the archaeological and documentary evidence, it is clear that they mostly used the Greek alphabet. No Celtic inscriptions on monuments have been found before the Roman era, but numerous inscribed coins have been discovered. They have mostly been found in the southeast of Britain. Coins were minted in Britain from around 100 BCE. However, the coins did not start to be inscribed until the middle of the 1st century BCE. Caesar's comments suggest that they were perfectly adept at writing. With that in mind, notice what Caesar tells us at De Bello Galactico 6.13. It is believed that their rule of life was discovered in Britain and transferred thence to Gaul. And today, those who would study the subject more accurately journey as a rule to Britain to learn it. Now, according to this statement, the Druidic center of learning was Britain. So if the Druids could write well and their center of learning was in Britain, then it's not unreasonable to conclude that writing was well known in Britain as well as in Gaul. Interesting stuff that I learned about the Celts. First thing, they fought naked from time to time. I've got a short story here by Polybius. It's his writing directly. There were several historians from the 1st century BCE that noted this. It's not like it's just one historian. They could be pulling from other writings, but even Caesar himself, he discusses it. Polybius here, he's comes up with what I think is the best description. I'm only going to read a short excerpt from his writings. This was written again in the 1st century BCE, if I'm not mistaken. So, this is his words, and I quote, "When the men who were armed with the javelin advanced in front of the legions, in accordance with the regular method of Roman warfare, and hurled their javelins in rapid and effective volleys, the inner ranks of the Celts found their jerkins and leather breeches of great service. But to the naked men in the front ranks, this unexpected mode of attack caused great distress and discomfort." Can you imagine what kind of great distress and discomfort a javelin would do to your naked body? I think he's got to be making a joke here. Like, to me, that is a hilarious line to say, but yeah, I'll let you think of it what you will. There are other depictions of them fighting naked. Now, obviously, not all of them fought naked, but it was substantial enough, or there were enough of them to make note of it. You know, it's not like there was one guy, Uncle Ted out there, who decided to get naked so he could run faster and move quicker. No, there were a line of them thought, oh yeah, this is a good idea. Let's take off all of our clothes and go out with a steel sword and fight against these Romans. So, you know, give you an idea of their mindset. One other famous thing or interesting thing that I didn't know about them, other than all of their structures were built out of wood, you can find some of their like village sites, because the hills, like you can see indentions, inclinations, and things like this where they built forts. But it's completely just the foundation. There's no wooden structures because it's completely gone. One other thing that they did find was chariots, which I found really interesting. The chariots they used, similar to the Egyptian, idea that you probably see in your head, but instead you've got a shirtless guy who is being driven by another shirtless guy. One of them is the driver, one of them is the warrior. So the driver, he drives the warrior to the battlefield. He drops him off, and the warrior fights. He fights the people. If the chariot driver sees that his warrior is in distress and in discomfort, he will go and get him. He will pick him up in the chariot and take him off the battlefield. That was their main purpose, to take one guy to the battlefield to fight. I'm assuming these guys were really rich or really good fighters. I don't know. One of the two, maybe both. Fascinating, I thought. They used them a little bit for cutting through, like the phalanxes and stuff like that. They try to get through the Roman lines, cut a path through there, and, create a diversion sometimes for the warriors to escape, or so they can fill that gap and kind of divide the lines. But mostly it was for driving one warrior up to the front line so he could fight them, and sometimes naked. So it's very fascinating, this culture. By the 1st century AD, the expansion of the Roman Empire had integrated most Celtic territories in its dominion, setting the stage for the next chapter in the linguistic evolution of Britain, Latin. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. The next one that I will upload will be about the Romans and how that influenced the English language. So this will be a multi-part series. I'm going to basically take you through all of the English language and how it became what it is. We've just taken a look here at the Celts and their influence, which is really quite minuscule in comparison to the other ones that we're going to look at. But we have to start with the Celts, because the Celtic people are the British people. They are the original British people of that region. That's what their names were. We don't have any information before then, as far as I could find. even what we know is really obscure. It comes from one or two sources. So for me, it was fascinating to know that these Celtic people, the British people, had actually a very small role in the English language itself. And even today, we use very little of the Celtic language. Now, as I stated, Welsh, in Ireland, they may speak some dialects that could reflect their ancestors, but it's not going to be, I don't think, close to what they would have spoke, 2,000 years ago, the way that they sounded. If you look, there's videos online, maybe I'll put in a clip.
Agus chonig sé sean bhean. Agus í
La vegetau al materia de la hanome miniki grehos.
Apes la vagan mahe.
Eh?
Pes la vagan mahe.
Oh, ya mereveas.
You can hear their words, and if you're an American or an English speaker, when they first start speaking, you think you're going to be able to understand them because of the sounds, but it's gibberish. It doesn't make any bit of sense. So it's really fascinating, to me at least, how small of an influence the actual British Celtic people, before it became Britain, had on that language. Because what we're going to find is that other languages really, when they were conquered, because the British were conquered several times during this period, they had a huge influence on these people. And they adapted and overcame and changed their way of life to adapt to the situation. It's quite fascinating, I think. So that is the story of the Celts. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully in a few days I'll be able to upload Romans and the Latin impact on English, which is, for me, one of the most fascinating stories that I had ever read. I read multiple, authors and historians and scholars. And, they pretty much all agree. They pretty much point to all the same direction. And I'm going to, put all of their information together into one cohesive idea, hopefully. So stay tuned for that. Hope you enjoyed it, and catch you next time.
Thank you.